In this video, I'm going to show you how to unbox this Samsung MU7000 solo and go through the picture settings in the user menu. Okay, it turns out that there are two slots for each foot to go into, so that you can actually place it on a narrower AV rack. If you wish to place it at the far end, then obviously you will need a wider AV rack, but you can just place it on the inner slot, so that you don't need to go out and buy a new AV rack. Around the back, Samsung has also included a number of design elements to provide tidier cable management and an overall cleaner look. So this is the Samsung MU7000 all set up and ready to go. This is the UK version of the 55-inch model. The specific model number is UE55MU7000. I'm going to go through the picture settings in the user menu and see what's available. So if I press the settings button, go to picture mode. I've set it to Cowl Day because I'm filming this in a relatively bright environment and I think it would be easier for you to actually see it. Cowl Day is a specific mode that is meant for daytime calibration. Cowl Night for nighttime calibration, movie, natural, standard, and dynamic. So we'll just go back to Cowl Day. And what next is we'll go into expert settings. Backlight determines the light output of the television. The brighter your environment, the higher the light output should be from your television. However, if you set your backlight too high in a dimly lit room, then it may get quite tiring for your eyes because the brightness can be quite glaring. Brightness control determines the digital visual black level. If you set it too high, the black side will become grayer without any visible increase in color detail. But if you set it too low, then the color detail will be cut. Contrast determines the digital white level. If you set it too high, some of the brighter detail or even whiter than white elements may get blown out. But if you set it too low, then obviously the dynamic range of the image will be reduced quite significantly. Sharpness is just basically edge enhancement. For a neutral setting, as professional calibrators usually like to set the Samsung televisions to 0. Color is a global control that affects the saturation and luminance of all the colors in the spectrum. Tint rotates the color. Usually, we professional calibrators tend to leave color and tint controls at their default settings because there is an additional color management system, or CMS, that allows us to go in and fine-tune each individual colors in a more precise manner. Apply picture settings to all sources. Digital Clean View is Samsung's name for their noise reduction system to deal with less than stellar sources, really noisy, say, older sources. Auto Motion Plus settings, if we go into it, I've set it to custom, and you can see that there are quite a few settings: off, auto, or custom. So auto is just how Samsung think the motion should look. They will apply the motion interpolation automatically depending on the content, whereas custom allows you to have a more precise control of the motion enhancing technologies on this television. Now, blur reduction and judder reduction are frame interpolation. Blur reduction deals with lower frame rate, whereas judder reduction applies to higher frame rate. And LED clear motion is essentially dark frame, black frame insertion on this television. If we actually switch it on, then you may be able to see from the camera that the light output of the image has actually come down, and also there may be visible flicker. This is due to additional black frames being inserted in between the original frame to clear our retinal persistence for a higher motion clarity. Switch off LED clear motion, and then we'll go into local dimming. So this MU7000, I believe, is an H-lit LED LCD, so any local dimming is going to be limited in its effectiveness. And on the 2017 Samsung televisions, the local dimming cannot be switched off, and there are a few controls of low, standard, and high, which will apply different algorithms to the set in terms of controlling the backlight. Contrast enhancer is just basically dynamic contrast. HDR Plus mode is a pseudo HDR mode that tries to convert SDR content to HDR content, applying some sort of pseudo HDR effect, but it is generally not effective, and for the most pristine preservation of the director's or producer's artistic intent, I generally don't like to switch HDR Plus mode on. Color tone warm to, so there are different color temperature preset on this television: warm to, warm 1, standard, and cool, which will be much bluer in color temperature. White balance controls allows us to calibrate the grayscale on this display, and for 2017, Samsung has provided a 20-point control as well, in addition to a basic 2-point control. Under the 2-point controls, there are 6 settings here. R gain stands for red gain, green gain, blue gain, red offset, green offset, and blue offset. The gain controls affect the brighter portion of the image, and the offset controls affect the darker portion of the image. Even though I say that they affect the brighter and the darker portion, they do contaminate each other as well. So when calibrating, we always need to go back and forth to check that the settings are level at both the darker and the brighter part of the picture. New for 2017, Samsung televisions offer 20-point white balance controls. So if you switch it on, what it will do is to allow you to calibrate the grayscale at each 5% interval, bringing this brand up to par with LG, which has already implemented 20-point white balance controls for the past few years now. Gamma, again, this is not a very well understood subject. So basically, input signal, when it arrives at the television needs to perform some sort of interpretation to determine how much of the incoming signal should be translated to the light output on screen. And gamma is an important determinant of that. Initially, when I had the first look at the Samsung 2017 QLEDs at their QA labs in Guildford, I thought that you could manually select the HLG or the ST2084. I don't know whether you can see it from the camera because they are grayed out. But I thought that you could manually force a PQ curve or HLG curve for calibration, but it appears not. So they are just grayed out and the television will automatically select the correct gamma function. So for standard dynamic range content, it will be using BT186. For HDR10 content, they will be using ST2084, and for HLG or hybrid log gamma content, which is the broadcast HDR standard, they will be using the HLG gamma function. And within each function, you can also use it to brighten the picture or darken the picture. Rgb Only Mode, it is useful for, let's say, if you don't have access to a colorimeter or any light measuring equipment, if you are just basically using a color filter from, let's say, the digital video essential disc to set your color decoding. Color space settings, right? And there are, I think, a few controls here. Auto, which is generally the most correct for both SDR and HDR content. So when the television actually detects an incoming SDR signal, it will default to Rec 709. Whereas if it is receiving a HDR or UHD signal, then it will default to BT 2020 depending on the incoming info frame. So native will just force this TV to its widest color gamut. Custom basically unlocks the Samsung MU7000's color management system, or CMS, where the company will be allowing us to calibrate the 3 primary colors of red, green, and blue, and the 3 secondary colors of yellow, cyan, and magenta. Now, under each color, there are 3 further controls for you to adjust: red, green, and blue. So the color management system on Samsung televisions are RGB based, whereas the color management system on all other brands, such as Panasonic, LG, Sony, doesn't offer color management system. So let's say, for the purpose of this discussion, let's say Philips, let's say LG, let's say Panasonic, their color management system is based on HSL, or hue, saturation, and luminance. At the core, there's generally no difference in terms of the results of their respective color management system. So regardless of whether it is RGB based like the Samsung or HSL based like the LG, the Philips, and the Panasonic, the outcome, we can still generally get a reasonably good colors out of it. But in the purest mode, most color management system all boils down to RGB anyway. So in a sense, you can say that the Samsung way is the most direct, but it is less intuitive for calibrators and DIY enthusiasts to interpret and comprehend and manage and apply effectively versus the HSL system of the LG, the Philips, and the Panasonic. Alright, and those are apparently all the picture settings. What I want to show you too is that there is an additional settings under the general submenu where you can actually engage game mode to reduce the input lag on this television for a faster gaming experience. Now, there's on the 2016 Samsung series, such as the KS series or even the KU series, first of all, the game mode is actually not found in the general menu. I think the game mode on last year's model are found in, I think there's another expert settings in here where you can just enable game mode directly from the picture menu, but this year Samsung has reverted to form and put it back into the general submenu. So I will be spending probably the next couple of weeks testing and reviewing this television. If you have any questions about the Samsung MU7000, just feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube section below. If you found this video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTV Test YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.